You know how you know you're getting older? When you bend over to pick something up and you suddenly think, I wonder if there's anything else I can do as long as I'm down here. Well, one day, while I was picking something up, some photos came through my hand, and I recalled many years ago some things that inspired me by being in Israel. Now, my Hebrew Jewish name is Peretz Baruch. My English name is Rich. That was a long time ago. But being inspired by Israel made a big difference in my life. And I guess you could say what you're about to see could be called Rich Returns. I had a pair of tefillin that I had left in my car in Lakewood, New Jersey. When I came back, the car had been broken into and the tefillin were stolen. The police said I would probably never see those religious articles again, probably stolen by somebody trying to sell them for drugs. And they told me that I should expect not to see them again. Now, they had a lot of sentimental value to me because, you see, as a youngster, I was told I didn't have to put on tefillin. They were a vestige of the past. Little did I learn that they were the key to my future. And how I got them, well, that meant a lot to me. In fact, it was inspired by Israel and by being a Jew. It was October 1973. I didn't know, nor did anybody else know, that the Yom Kippur War was about to break out. We were coming out of the great synagogue in Yerushalayim, Jerusalem, when we heard the sirens blare. The holiest day of the year, and Israel was at war, attacked by its enemies, by surprise, mercilessly, viciously. Now, I had been producing commercials and other television programs in New York when I decided I wanted to spend part of the Jewish holidays in the land of Israel. So I was there on Yom Kippur. I volunteered to work with a group that was taking things to boost the morale of Israeli soldiers that were now across the Suez Canal. So we got into an army truck, and as volunteers we went across and delivered ice cream and nuts and books and really boosted their morale. But what we didn't expect was to see the death and destruction that was surrounded the entire area at that point. There was devastation. We came back and we grabbed a ride on a truck. And that was the very last day of the war. And we felt good about having helped the Israeli soldiers and being part of something that we knew was a part of Jewish history. But what I didn't know was that on that truck there was sand and dirt, and it was moist. It looked like it had been from fruit from a kibbutz, but what I didn't realize was that it was actually blood that was on the sand and the dirt on which Israeli soldiers that had been fatally wounded on that very last day of the war, this was a burial truck, and they were taking these young soldiers back to the kibbutzim for their final resting place. We all began to cry, and I began to think, these soldiers died as Jews. Maybe I should start thinking more about living like a Jew. I was determined when I got back to Yerushalayim that there was something more that I would do. In the interim, I was hired as a producer and an actor in an Israeli theater company that was producing English language plays. Now, I was rehearsing somewhere else when I realized that I didn't know how to get to the theater. So on my way to the theater in Tel Aviv, I asked the first person I saw, and he was a young Hasidic man. I didn't know if he'd be able to know where the theater was, but he did. He spoke perfect English. He was from Chicago. And he said, please, when you finish the course of the play, come back and visit. So I did, and he introduced me to an elderly Jew who asked me if I was keeping Shabbos, if I was putting on tefillin, keeping kosher, or any of the other mitzvahs. Now, I said, listen, you have your way of doing things, I have my way of doing things. He said, look, why not do one mitzvah right? Do you put on tefillin? I said, no, my rabbi told us that it was a vestige of the past. He said, well, I'll tell you what, I can get you a very good price. Why not do one mitzvah right? And who knows what will come of it? Well, you know what? I went back to the moshav that I was staying on, and right then and there was a letter for me from my brother Skip, alav shalom. And Skip sent me a letter with a check in it that was the exact amount that the tefillin cost. It was a belated birthday present. Well, I went right away, and I bought that tefillin. And then I headed to Yerushalayim. And there I met some old friends. We got to talking, and I asked them if they knew where I could learn how to put on the tefillin. They said, there's a yeshiva right down the block. It's called Or Sameach. And there I walked in, and a new world just opened up. The friends of mine who were Rhodes Scholars, they went to Harvard and to Yale. Some were movie producers, some were doctors, some were on their way to law school. They said, why not take some time to learn? Well, to make a long story short, I did. I stayed for about 2 years. And when I came back, my parents saw a different person. They saw their Richie turn into Peretz Baruch, which was the name that they gave me at my bris. And you know what? My parents koshered the house, and they themselves began to enjoy the beauty of Shabbos. But never did I really appreciate what that meant until a couple of years later when I got married, and then a year later when I had my first child. And I saw my father cry at the bris of his first grandchild. My parents were inspired by me, and they were inspired by Israel, as was my brother Skip. Remember what I told you about the tefillin being stolen? Well, hey, what do you think happened? I found out that two young boys had seen an officer, a police detective, walking down the street carrying the bag of tefillin.
Providence that I walked back, number one, and number two, that I bumped into these guys that knew who it exactly belonged.
And what do you think happened? They said, we know who it belongs to. I went down to the police station. He says, hey, Mr. Eichler, I want to tell you something. When I'm on a drug bust, I never take religious articles. I don't know what made me take it today. And I'll tell you something else. I never walk to the station house. I always take my car. I don't know what made me do it today. Hey, today's the last day of your holiday, Hanukkah, huh? Well, let me tell you something. This is a miracle.
It could have sat in headquarters in our evidence locker for years and never been returned.
And I'm giving you back your religious articles. You know why? Because the Jewish people are inspiring. So is the land of Israel. Enjoy your holiday. Well, I went back and called my brother Skip and told him what happened. He said, Peretz, you know, you also bought me a pair of tefillin, but I haven't put them on. I didn't even know where they were. And yet today, on the first day of Hanukkah, I looked for them and they just appeared. And they say that in the merit of one brother helping the other to come back to his heritage. The second one had his tefillin returned. And you know what? My brother Skip was inspired by Israel because his brother was.
I was born in Eretz Yisrael, and obviously I was inspired by this place, the soil, the Yerushalayim, the Kaisel, but I was also very inspired by my father-in-law, my Peretz Baruch Eichler, that he came back to Judaism through being here in Eretz Yisrael.
And you know what? Today my children and grandchildren feel the same way. We're all inspired by Israel.